per braid. It is the second week of August, and the sun has been standing on the valley since morning without a cloud to slow it. You're walking across the yard toward a low chicken house, and the grass is brown at the edges of the path, and the hens have gone quiet the way they do when it is too hot to complain. You pull the door open, and the thing that hits you first is not the heat. You expected the heat. What hits you first is the air. It goes up your nose and into the back of your throat, and it stings, sharp and sour and hot, and your eyes water before you have taken one step inside. That is ammonia. That is what 40 birds and a summer week and no moving air will make out of a dirt floor. And you stand in the doorway, breathing through your fingers, thinking, no wonder they are quiet. Nothing wants to breathe this. Now let me take you into that same coop on another August afternoon. You pull the door open and you walk in and you keep walking because there is nothing to stop you. The air is plain. Not perfumed, not sweet, just plain the way air is in a field, and the birds are up and moving. And the only thing that changed in that whole building is a shallow wooden box wedged into the vent hole at the far end, filled a couple of inches deep with something black and wet that looks like the bottom of a burned barrel. It costs $7. No cord, no motor, no filter to buy, and it is doing quietly what a machine in a plastic shell would want $300 and a subscription to do. Now I want you to sit with that a moment, because you have been taught the way everybody has been taught, that clean air is something you buy. That it arrives in a box with a light on the front and a fan inside, and when the light turns orange, you buy a new filter, and that is simply the cost of breathing indoors. I'm not going to tell you those machines do nothing, but I want you to know what they are. They are the new thing. That whole idea, air as a product, air with a brand on it, is younger than most of the folks listening to me right now. For thousands of years before it, people lived shoulder to shoulder with their animals in cellars and cabins and barns and sick rooms, and they knew how to make bad air good again. They did it with a tray. The machine did not save us from the stink. We had beaten the stink already. It only made us forget how. My name is Amos. I am Amish, and I farm a piece of ground in a green valley here in Ohio, the same ground my father worked and his father before him. I have never paid an electric bill in my life. I did not learn this out of a book or a school, or from a man in a white coat. I learned it from my grandfather, who kept a shallow pan of black grit in the window hole of the milk room every summer of his life, and never once explained why. Because to him it was no more remarkable than a broom. He learned it from his people, and they from theirs. This is not knowledge I own. It is knowledge that passed through me on its way to you. So here's what I'm going to hand you tonight, all of it in order. There is the buying, where almost everyone ruins the whole thing before they begin, and it turns on one bag you must never pick up. There is the marvel hiding inside those black lumps, the real reason any of this works. There is the making of it, 15 minutes and $1 tray and a jug of water. There is the placing, the one step nearly everybody gets wrong. There is the version for your animals built of scrap and wire. And there is the keeping of it, the morning habit and the day in the sun that lets one bag carry you a whole season. And woven through the middle, one honest word about the cooling, and some folks will not like it, and I'm going to give it to you anyway. So let me start where every one of these goes wrong, which is standing in a store aisle before you ever get the thing home. What you want is activated charcoal in granules, little hard chips about the size of coarse gravel. And here is the part that will surprise you. You do not go to the hardware store for it. You go to the pet aisle, to the fish tank section, where they keep the gravel, and the pumps, and the little nets. That is where it sits, in a plain bag, because folks buy it for their aquarium filters, and a bag costs around $5 to $8, horticultural charcoal sold for potting soil, does the same work. Either one, granules in a bag, cheap. Now hear me, because this next part is the whole thing, and I will say it more than once. Do not, under any circumstance, use barbecue briquettes, not the ones in the sack by the grills, not the ones already in your garage. A briquette is not charcoal in the way we mean it. It is charcoal dust ground down and pressed together with binders and starches into a little pillow shape, and the pressing is exactly the problem. Because it squeezes shut every single thing that would have made it useful. There are no open passages left. It is a brick. You can soak a briquette all day and set it in your window, and it will do nothing except sit there being wet and black and making you think the old ways are foolishness. And some of you will try it anyway because it is free and already in the garage, and it will not work, and I do not want you blaming the method for the material. Briquettes are pressed shut. Leave them by the grill. Now here's the marvel of it, and this is the part I want you to really understand, because when you understand it, you will never look at a handful of black, nothing the same way again. Take a piece of that activated charcoal and hold it in your palm. To your eye, it is a hard little chip. It looks solid. It is not solid. It is not remotely solid. That chip is riddled all the way through with passages, tunnels going every direction, and off those tunnels come smaller tunnels, and off those smaller ones still, down past anything your eye could follow. It is a warren, a whole city of hollow with a thin skin of black holding it together. And now I'm going to tell you a true thing that sounds like a tall tale, and it is not one. If you could take one good handful of that charcoal and unfold it, open out every tunnel and lay all that inside surface flat on the ground, it would not cover this table. It would cover more ground than the whole room you're standing in, one handful. It is the most complicated sponge ever made. And that word activated is not a marketing word, it is a thing they did to it. They take plain char and run it through hard heat and steam, and that steam burns out everything loose and blows those passages wide open, millions of them, through the middle of every chip. Activated charcoal is char that has been opened up on purpose. That is why one is worth $7 and the other is a brick. And that hollow gives you two gifts at once. The first is water. All that inside room means the chip drinks. It holds far more water than a stone its size has any right to hold, and not in a puddle but spread through millions of tunnels, and it lets it go slow, a little at a time, all day long. The second is that when air moves through that warren, the stink goes in and does not come back out. The ammonia, the sour of the damp corner, the old grease, the sick smell of a closed room, the air carries it in, and the passages take hold and keep it. Now the schoolbook word for that catching is adsorption, and there are men who will explain it to you for an hour. You do not need the word. You will never need the word. You need to know that it catches the stink and holds on to it, and what comes out the other side is plain air, a sponge for smell, nothing more complicated than that. Now I owe you a plain word about the cooling, and I'm going to give it straight even though it will cost me something to say it. Yes, this cools, wet things cool. When water turns to vapor, it has to steal the heat to do it, and it steals that heat right out of the air passing over. That is why you feel cold coming out of the creek on a July day with the wind on you. I already gave you the whole of this in another one, the $4 fix for a hothouse, where I showed you the wet cotton sheet in the doorway and the cross draft that pulls the night through. If you missed it, here's the idea in a sentence. Wet cloth in the path of moving air makes cool air, and a house with 2 openings will pull for free. Go watch it after this. I'm not going to spend your evening telling you the same thing twice, because here's the honest word: the cleaning works everywhere. Every climate, every month, that tray takes the stink out of the air just the same in Arizona as in Alabama. The cooling does not. The cooling depends on dry air, because dry air is thirsty air, and thirsty air pulls water off that charcoal fast, and fast evaporation is where the cool comes from. Out west you will feel real degrees off that tray, but I'm not going to tell you a $7 tray will cool your house like a machine in a Mississippi August, because it will not. In the wet south, on the Gulf, in the humid east, the air is already carrying all the water it can hold and has no appetite for more, and what you get is gentle. Maybe a couple of degrees at the window? Maybe. And anybody who tells you different is selling you something, so take it for what it is. It is an air cleaner that cools a little. It is not a cooler that cleans a little. Get that the right way round and you will never be disappointed in it. So now we come to the 15 minutes of work, and I want you to hear how little there is of it. You want a shallow tray? A baking sheet with a lip, a cheap plastic boot tray, an old cake pan nobody wants. Shallow is the whole point. You pour your granules in and spread them flat, a layer about 1 inch to 2 inches deep. That is it. And I know what you're thinking, because everybody thinks it, that if a little is good, a deep pile must be better. It is not. It is worse. A deep pile only hides charcoal under charcoal, and the air never touches the bottom. What you are after is not volume, it is face. How much of that black is looking up at the moving air? Spread it wide, keep it shallow, and if you have extra, do not pile it, get a second tray. Then you soak it. Clean water poured over the top until it is all under, and you will hear it drink. It hisses and ticks and mutters as the water drives the air out of all those tunnels, and that sound is how you know you did not buy briquettes. Let it drink a few minutes. And then, and this is the step folks skip, pour the standing water off, tip it out, drain it. You do not want a puddle because standing water touches air only on the very top and just sits there. What you want is the water held up inside the charcoal with air, able to get at all of it, so drain it until it stops running. The texture you're after is a wrung-out sponge. Wet clear through, heavy in the hand, but you can tip it and nothing pours. Damp inside, no puddle on top. Now, I'm going to tell you the one thing that nearly everybody gets wrong, and it decides whether you built a machine or a knick-knack. That tray does not go on the coffee table. It does not go on a stand in the middle of the room where you can admire it. Set it there, and I will tell you what it does for you. Almost nothing. The tray goes at the mouth. It goes where the air comes in, the window that catches the evening breeze right on the sill in the gap, so the air has to come over it. The doorway the draft moves through, the vent hole in the wall. Find where the air enters and put the tray in its throat so every breath entering that room is made to cross the charcoal before it gets anywhere else. Not some of the air, all of it. And you can find the entrance with a match or a bit of thread and 1 minute of paying attention. Hold it up and watch which way it leans. That is the difference between a curiosity and a system. Same $7 of charcoal, same tray, same water. The one in the middle of the room is a curiosity, something to point at when company comes. The one in the window is a system, because it stands in the only door and everything must come through it. And you already know this in your own body. Think of breathing in through your nose on a cold morning, how the air goes in raw and comes down your throat, warmed and wetted and cleaned, every bit of it. Because your nose stands in the doorway and nothing gets past it. Now imagine your nose out on a table in the middle of the room. It would be a fine nose. It would do you no good whatsoever. Put the tray where the nose goes and let the room breathe through it. So let us go back out to the coop, because the animals need this most and cannot come tell you about it. A bird's lungs are a more delicate business than yours, and that ammonia burning your eyes in the doorway burns them all day and all night with no door to walk out of. This is where I would put the first one, before the bedroom, before anything, and for them, you do not want a cake pan, because a cake pan gets walked in and tipped over inside a day. Here is what you build instead. Take scrap lumber, whatever is leaning against the barn wall, and knock together a shallow box 3 or 4 inches deep, no more. Leave 2 of the sides off it, opposite each other, so it is open front and back and the air goes straight through the middle instead of around it. Then take hardware cloth, wire mesh, and line the inside and tack it over those open ends, so the granules cannot spill, but the air passes through like the wire was not there. Fill it with your inch or 2, soak it, drain it to the wrung-out sponge, and wedge that box into the vent opening of your coop or into the wire of the rabbit hutch so it plugs the hole. Now every bit of air entering that building enters through the charcoal. You have made the coop breathe through a nose, and over the first 2 days the sting goes, not the smell of animals, you will always have that. The sting goes, and when it does, the birds are up and about in the middle of the day again. And here's the part that decides whether this lasts you a week or a season, and it is 2 habits, and neither is hard. The first is the morning. 1 glass of water poured over the tray, and drain the extra off. 30 seconds while the coffee is going, because a dry tray is a dead tray. The water is half the work, and the whole of the cooling, and a bone-dry tray in a window is just a pan of gravel. Wet it every morning. It is no more trouble than filling a water bowl. The second habit is for later, somewhere around 1 to 2 months. Depending on how bad the air was you asked it to eat, it slows down. The sting creeps back. The tunnels are full. Every one of those millions of little rooms has something in it now, and no space is left to catch anything new. It is saturated. Now here is where the modern world would have you buy another one, and here is where you do not. You take that tray outside on the first hot bright day. Full sun spread the granules thin on a sheet of metal or an old board and leave them the whole day. The heat goes down into those tunnels and drives back out what they had taken hold of into the open air where it harms nobody. By evening it is empty again. Bring it in, soak it, drain it, and it goes back to work like new. 1 $7 bag, wet every morning and set in the sun every month or so, will carry you clean through a summer and be waiting for you the next one. Now I need to stop and speak to you plain for a moment, the way my grandfather would have, because I'm talking about the air you breathe, and I would rather you trust me than be impressed by me. A wet tray of charcoal in an open, moving, ventilated space is safe, perfectly safe. A window with a breeze, a coop with vents, a room with the door standing open, that is what this is for, and there is no trouble in it. But here is the line, and do not step over it. Never seal up a big wet bed of charcoal in a small closed room, and then shut the door and sit in there with it. Not overnight, not to make it work faster. Damp charcoal in a sealed space, given enough time, can quietly eat at the air itself, with no smell and no warning. So there is one rule, and it covers every use of this you will ever make. Air must be moving. If the air is moving, you're fine. If you shut the door and stop the air to make it work better, you have not made it work better. Moving air, always. That is the rule. Now here comes the turn, and I want you to lean in for it because it is not the one you're expecting. You think I'm about to tell you about the air conditioner? I am not. The air conditioner is honest work. It does a hard job well and costs what it costs. The story is the other machine, the one on the floor in the corner of the bedroom, the purifier. The tall white plastic tower with the little light on it, $300, $400, humming away and telling you it is protecting your family. Go and open it up. Take the cover off. There is a fan, a paper pleat, and then a black layer, a mat, or a sleeve, packed with granules. That black layer is doing the actual work you bought the whole machine for. And that black layer is this. The exact same thing sitting in the fish aisle for $7 a bag. So, what did the $400 buy? A plastic shell to put the charcoal in, a fan to push air across it, which your window was already doing for free, a brand name on the front, and most of all, a shape of charcoal that only they make cut to fit only their machine. So 4 times a year the light turns orange and you buy it again, forever, for as long as you own the thing. Now I'm not going to tell you there is a villain in this. There is not. Nobody sat in a room and decided to hide a tray from you. It is simpler and honestly a little worse. There is no money in a bag of charcoal in a pan. Nobody can sell you a monthly filter for a tray you freshen up in the sunshine. Nobody can put a brand on the breeze through your own window. It is not locked in a vault. It is just quiet, and quiet things do not sell, so nobody says them, and after a generation of nobody saying them, everybody forgets they were ever true. So let me set the whole of it in your hands now. The buying, granules of activated charcoal, $5 to $8, out of the fish aisle, and never a briquette, because pressed shut is worthless. The marvel, one handful holds more inside surface than the room it stands in, and those tunnels drink water slow and catch stink and keep it. The making, a shallow pan 1 to 2 inches spread wide, soak it, then drain it, wrung out sponge, no puddle. The placing, the tray goes in the mouth of the air, the window, the door, the vent. Never the middle of the room, because that is the difference between a curiosity and a system. The animals, a scrap box open at 2 ends, lined with wire, wedged in the coop vent. The keeping, a glass of water every morning, and a day in full sun every month or 2. And the truth plain, it cleans your air anywhere on this earth and cools it only where the air is dry. And through all of it, air moving, always air moving. Now I want to hear from you, and I mean that true. Tell me down below where you're going to set the first one. The bedroom, the one shut up all day that smells like a shut-up room by evening. The coop, the barn, the workshop, the camper, the little back room where somebody is sick and has to breathe whatever is in there. Tell me which and what you're trying to get out of that air. And here's the second thing, and I want it more than the first. If you live down in the wet South, in the Gulf country, build this and come back and tell me the honest number. What drop did you actually get a degree? 2? None at all, because I have stood here and told you to expect very little, and now I would like to know what you found. Tell me even if it makes me look wrong, especially then, because this knowledge does not live in books. It lives in kitchens and in cellars and in coops and in the memory of folks like you. And every time one of you writes down what actually happened in your own house, a little piece of it gets saved from being forgotten. I read every single comment, every one. And before you go, let me tell you what I mean to show you next time, because it belongs alongside this one. Next, I'm going to walk you into a garden that grows near 3 times what your garden grows. Same weather, same rain, same sun over the same hill. And the man who owns it has not bought one thing to make it do that. Not a bottle, not a bag, not a box off a shelf. Everything he uses was already lying on his own place, and most folks haul theirs away in a truck and pay somebody to take it. Come back and I will show you what he does with it. Until then, keep it simple, keep it honest, and keep it homemade. And remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting